Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slugs and Steins. My name is Mike Reapy. I'm a UC Santa Cruz Alumni Council member, and I'd like to welcome you to our monthly speaker series, Slugs and Steins, Lectures from UC Santa Cruz. For those who are new, our Slugs and Steins series engages a UCSC faculty member in discussions with you, the local community of Silicon Valley, and our extended community online, with a goal of making us all Renaissance women and men. We want to make it feel like you're at UC Santa Cruz sitting in class, but with drinks. David, another volunteer organizer, is with me tonight. We're both alumni and spend our days in entrepreneurial companies, Silicon Valley style. After tonight's talk, as an optional addition, we'll open up to virtual networking and discussion room and a discussion room as a trial, an experiment for those who are interested. And we hope that this will catch on and we can keep doing this next time. There'll be a link in the chat and on the screen at the end of the event. So please use those Zoom meeting credentials to join us in the networking space to chat immediately after this webinar is over. And tonight, we raise a virtual stein with Dr. Chris Benner, the Dorothy E. Everett Chair in Global Information and Social Entrepreneurship and a professor of environmental studies and sociology at the University of California, Santa Cruz. He currently directs the Everett Program for Technology and Social Change and the Santa Cruz Institute for Social Transformation. His research examines the relationship between technological change, regional development, and the structure of economic opportunity. His most recent book is called Equity, Growth, and Community, and it examines how inequality stunts economic growth and how bringing together equity and growth requires concerted local action. He received his PhD in city and regional planning from the University of California, Berkeley. Tonight, we're going to take your questions via Zoom's Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen. You don't need to wait to submit your questions. You can type them at any time. If you see someone else's question that you like, you can upvote it and we'll ask it sooner. This talk is being recorded. In a few days, you'll be able to find it on the UC Santa Cruz Arts and Lectures YouTube channel. We'll post the link in our social media channels and our follow-up emails in case you can't find it. Okay, does everyone have their stein? Great, I've got your slug, Professor Chris Benner.
Thank you, Mike. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. And thank you all for coming and joining us here for this discussion. I have some things that I want to share of some of the research that I've been doing, but I'm really also interested in your perspective and questions about that. And, the talk tonight is about online groceries and the future of work related to online groceries. And I actually wanted to start with a poll to get a sense of how many of you have ever shopped online. So you'll see two questions here. Have you ordered groceries online in the past 12 months? Or do you expect to order groceries online in the next 12 months? So let's see how we're doing. Okay, looks like we got almost everyone voted there, and we're looking at about 57% have ordered groceries online in the past 12 months, and 59% roughly expect to do that in the next 12 months as well, about the same percentage. Okay, that's cool. You'll find that that's pretty similar to, let me see if I can share that result so you can all see that. It's about 55% yes in the last 12 months and 58% yes in the next 12 months. So with that, I'm gonna share my screen and hopefully this will work as tech is wont to do, hopefully. So online groceries, e-commerce, the pandemic, and the future of work in retail food. And, my fun reading these days is things in the grocery industry like this magazine, Grocery Dive. There's also Progressive Grocer and Food and Tech. And you may see these in the headlines in the New York Times as well. There's been a tremendous surge since the pandemic in ordering of food online. Kroger, one of the major grocery chains in the country, just announced more than a doubling of their sales in e-commerce since the last year. Walmart has taken off in e-commerce. It has now passed Amazon as the largest e-commerce grocery store. And the statistics go on and on. Ahold Delhaize, which is the fourth largest in the country, has seen 127% growth since last year. Instacart, that does a lot of the home delivery, went from 180,000 people working on the platform prior to the pandemic to over 500,000 in 8 weeks, and became profitable for the first time in April. And they estimate that they will process more than $35 million in grocery sales in 2020, which, if it's true and comes to pass, that's about 4% of all grocery sales. That's a huge amount for such a young company. And if you look at surveys, and this came from March, of the proportion that had bought groceries online in the past 12 months, it was about 52%, so a little bit higher than that for the audience tonight, and another 62% expecting to buy it in the next 12 months. Now, this is an important issue, I think, for the economy, for the workforce, for our understanding of retail and the future of consumer spending, in part because retail is the largest employment sector in the country. It's about 10% of all US employment, and grocery is the largest share of that retail. It's about a $750 billion industry. It employs more than 3.2 million people. And actually, within the retail sector, it's one of the better paying subsectors. Part of that is because it's the only retail sector that has any significant union presence. About 15% of grocery workers are unionized. And about average pay of $15 an hour, which of course doesn't mean much in California, but when you average that across other parts of the country with lower cost of living, it's actually a pretty decent retail wage. And so, it raises questions of, with this growth of e-commerce, what are the implications of that for people's livelihoods? And what does that mean for existing grocery workers and their livelihoods? And what are the implications for new jobs and growing jobs that are part of that? And this is a study that has become, I think, much more important with the pandemic because of this tremendous surge. But it's actually part of a longer term study that a group of us have been doing, connected with the UC Berkeley Labor Center, and funded by a number of foundations, the Kellogg Foundation, food interests, but also the Ford Foundation and Open Society Foundation. It's really trying to understand the future of work and how is technology being used in reshaping work practices. And this is designed a little bit like a crystal ball effort. It's a little different than most research projects. We're actually trying to look at data of what's going on in the world. We're trying to understand sort of the broad trends as they're emerging. And what does that mean for the next, 3, 5, 10 years or so is the time frame we're looking at, to try and get ahead of the curve a little bit. And what are the implications for public policy, for economic strategy, for union strategy and worker voice to make a difference. And, as a science fiction addict, I'm really inspired by this work by William Gibson, who's, people don't know, he was the first person to coin the term cyberspace many, many years ago. He made this point that the future is already here. It's just not history, and what does that mean for our future? And so, when you want to look at the cutting edge of an industry and the growth of home delivery, well, maybe it's best to start with history. We used to get home delivery of at least certain items, milk. I'm old enough that I remember getting milk delivered at home. And we used to make our orders for groceries from other people, not doing it ourselves. This was the standard grocery store, up until the early 1900s. There'd be a grocer, you'd bring your order in and give it to the grocer, and they'd fill it off of the shelves and bring it to you, and then you'd leave. Now, that model changed. Um, I see that I got lost for a little bit there. Sorry for that. Hopefully I'm back okay. I did get a message saying unstable internet, so hopefully we don't have a problem anymore, but I'll keep an eye on the chat to see if there's further problems. So this self-service model of grocery store, or sorry, the non-self-service model, the pre-self-service model was changed in 1916. Piggly Wiggly in Memphis, Tennessee, founded by Clarence Saunders, pioneered a new innovation in the grocery industry, which was what we have now all come to understand as your typical grocery store, where we as customers can go in and get our own groceries off the shelf and fill our own baskets and take it to the cashier and cash out. That was a tremendous innovation in 1916 that still has a historical marker in Memphis. And so when we think about the growth of e-commerce, what we're really realizing is that what's happening is moving from this existing self-service model to this emerging e-commerce model, in which, what are actually four distinct steps in the self-service model, where we develop our own grocery list, we fill the order ourselves, then we take the order to the checkout counter and a cashier checks us out, and then we bring it home ourselves. Now that's moving to three distinct new types of work. One is, customer develops a grocery list, often with the help of an algorithm, some kind of assisted recommendation system, certainly purchasing it on a website or a mobile device. So it's combining that, developing the grocery list and actually ordering it and paying for it. And then someone's got to fulfill it. And then, it's got to get to the customer, either picking it up in the store or having it delivered at home. And the first point I want to make here is that often in the field of the future of work, people think mostly about technology as automating human tasks, automating jobs. And that's a very simplistic way of thinking about technological change. And there certainly is automation going on of certain tasks, but technology is dramatically shifting boundaries between paid and unpaid work in complex ways. Those of us who used to do a lot of flying may remember you used to have to check in at a check-in counter with someone else doing that. Well, that's become self-service. That's become an automated process of us doing work that used to be paid. Well, this is the reverse of that, where we're now beginning to pay people and creating new jobs with technological change. So what I want to do in most of the presentation here, and I'll go through this pretty quickly so we can get some dialogue and discussion and Q&A, is really look at in each of those three steps of ordering online, of having the order fulfilled, and then getting it to the customer. What are the new technological capacities that are happening? How are they being used in business practices? And then what are the implications for workers as part of that? And that'll be sort of the concluding question in each area. But before jumping into that, I want to share that it's, of course, the world's a little more complicated than just that. And part of that is recognizing that the food that we purchase in a grocery store is only a part of the overall food basket of consumers in the US, of what we spend on food. And what we've seen over the last 60, 70, 80 years is actually the proportion of a typical family or household food budget going to food purchased at a grocery store and consumed at home is going down. From about 53% in 1997 to now about 45% in 2019. And the reverse is, the money we spend on food eaten away from home has gone up over time. But it's getting even more complex than that, because we have historically thought about a pretty distinct separation between grocery stores and restaurants. And what's happened over the last 20, 30 years is that distinction is merging together as grocery stores have tried to respond to these shifting consumer dynamics. And so what we're getting is, if we look on sort of the left column there, you can get basic ingredients in the store. You can also begin to get semi-prepared food, and the new product in this area is meal kits, which you could get from a grocery store. But, you can also think about sort of, cake packages or, prepared food in the frozen section that you need to cook yourself. But you can also now get full meals at grocery stores, a rotisserie chicken or deli item. Increasingly, that's become an important part of grocery stores. And so what that means in the online space is that you're getting a similar blending or blurring of this mix between, just basic ingredients or semi-prepared food or a full meal. And that, these new delivery channels, you can either order online and pick up in the store, or you can order online and have it delivered at home. So that's the whole world of what we're looking with. Now let's just dive into some of the technology and see what's happening in the technology world. And so first we're going to look at online ordering. And the first point I want to make about online ordering that is an important insight about sort of the role of technology and how it's being used in shaping work is that just because the technological capability is available doesn't mean it can easily be implemented in a business enterprise or in a workplace or be accepted by consumers, because we have had the ability to order groceries online since 1989. Peapod is the first company that does online ordering and home delivery, founded in 1989. And there was a long, slow development of it, moving out from its headquarters in Illinois and expanding across the country. Those of us who are old enough to remember the dot-com boom of the 1990s may remember Webvan, another very highly publicized company that was going to revolutionize the grocery field by building highly automated fulfillment centers where you can order online and have a robot-led factory fulfill the order. By the way, Peapod is mostly fulfilled by people, just picking off of shelves and putting it in packages. So Webvan ate up, I don't know the figures at the top of my head, billions of dollars of venture capital, went bankrupt after a couple of years. Major cautionary tale about when the market's not ready for the technological capabilities. Instacart's been around for 2012, so 8 years, and there's been a slow development of this that really got accelerated for the first time before the pandemic by Amazon purchasing Whole Foods in 2017. And that was kind of a wake up to the industry because, of course, Amazon's at the cutting edge of e-commerce, and grocery's been a bit of a laggard in e-commerce, which we'll see in just a second. And so when Amazon purchased Whole Foods, a lot of grocery chains around the country started to say, well, we got to get into this game. And Instacart was a major beneficiary of that because they had their online order systems already in place and could provide that delivery. But now increasingly the major grocery chains, and the largest ones in the country are Walmart, Kroger, Albertsons, which owns Safeway, Ahold Delhaize, which has a whole range of different brands, mostly on the East Coast, Shop and Stop, and they own Peapod as well. So it's accelerated quite a bit since that 2017 time, and we're getting new developments in the user interface. Because of course, one of the critical things about the growth of online groceries is what is customers' experience of that, and what are the barriers to using that? And those of you, 60% who've ordered groceries online, will get a chance, hopefully in the Q&A and discussion afterwards, to hear your experience of that. But for many people, particularly now in the pandemic, it's not a great customer experience. You order something online, the inventory is not in place, so the shopper's got to call you and say, can we substitute this or that? You order bananas, you want them green, you get them brown, you want an avocado at a particular firmness, you don't get it. So it's a real bit of a challenge. And those of us who are trying to figure out how to fill a cart online step by step, it's a bit of a difficulty figuring out all the products that we actually want, because a typical grocery store has 35,000 items in the store, so it takes a while to find that online. So we're getting more of these apps where recipe apps will automatically fill your grocery cart. Amazon had this one-touch dash button they had for a period of time when you ran out of a particular product that you use a lot. You could push the button and there was a Wi-Fi connection to your website that would put it in your cart to order. Actually are now developing ones with sensors in them, particularly for appliances, but trying to develop that to move into measuring in refrigerators. And this notion of a Internet of Things, IoT-driven smart kitchen, where your refrigerator would know when you got low on milk or butter or cheese or whatever else, and could automatically put that in your shopping cart to order when you want to go. But to do that, those of you who are in the tech industry know the complexities of trying to integrate a user-friendly front-end system with a highly complex back-end database system that's trying to track real-time inventory for 35,000 or more individual products. It takes a tremendous technological capacity that many stores in the grocery industry have not had the capacity in the past to take on. But the barriers to that are coming down. As they're becoming more integrated and what they call software as a service or retail as a service, where companies like Microsoft or Amazon or Google or IBM can offer sort of an integrated package as part of that. And tremendous incentives for increasing that online ordering because, as most of us know, I mean, data is the new oil. Is what they say, that it's the fundamental resource of an information economy, and the ability to understand your customer and what their interest is and future purchasing patterns is really what people are trying to get at, predictive marketing. So tremendous number of companies in this space. So just remember that when you order online, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that's not apparent, that makes it a real barrier to do effectively and efficiently. And part of what we've seen is that in the grocery sector, e-commerce has lagged far, far behind retail overall. Sort of that black line there is e-commerce in all retail trade. The most recent figures are up over 10% of all retail trade is now done online. But food and beverage, the grocery industry, is down there at the bottom, less than 1% by 2018 in overall prices. Estimate up to before the pandemic is maybe 2%, 3%, maybe in the industry is by e-commerce. It's gone up a bit now. But one of the things that's important to remember about that is that ordering something by online is only one channel of communication between the grocery store and their customers. And what people talk about in the industry is this omni-channel experience rather than a single channel experience. And so they have multiple ways of reaching people via mobile apps and store-supported delivery and drive-up collection sites. And the thing I'll point to with these red circles is that, what do you consider, this is a consumer survey, what do you consider to be the most advantageous benefit offered by mobile devices? Well, about 44% says order online and pick up at the store themselves. Another 24% are delivery of online orders. And it's very few people that imagine that they will do all of their ordering online. More typically, you might do some orders, more common things, but still plan to go and pick up things yourself in the store and shop online. And part of that is because there's many barriers to ordering online. There's the user interface. Consumers still prefer to choose their own vegetables and check the expiration date on goods that might go bad. These inventory hassles and there's additional costs. I mean, it's expensive to do that, and you have to pay for home delivery if you're going to do that. And this survey here on the right was just showing for early on in the pandemic, what is people's experience of digitally ordering groceries. And 16% were ultimately unable to place the order at all because of challenges on the web interface. Some were able to order, but it was highly delayed. And even those, only 9% were able to place an order and get it with no delay. So that's a challenging thing to do. So the key thing here in the online ordering is it's going to take a while to expand. And maybe the estimates are by 5 years from now, maybe high single digits of all grocery sales might be online, a bit higher for some of the major companies, but it's not going to be taking over the industry as a whole. And grocery stores as brick and mortar are likely to still be there for some period of time. So here's the second part of that self-service process is you have to fulfill the order after it's made. And the dominant model at the moment, and those of us in Santa Cruz who've walked around the local Safeway, and maybe you've seen it in other stores in your hometown, are beginning to see more and more people with, large carts, multiple tote boxes in there and fulfilling multiple orders at a time. And that's the dominant model today, where you're fulfilling someone's order in an existing store. And many people are employed in that. Walmart now claims to employ over 45,000 pickers doing that work. That's before the pandemic, and it's gone up quite significantly since then. This is not a great way to run a business long term. Stores are optimized for viewing of customers' preferences, and you want to put like items together. But when you're doing orders online, the most thing you want to do is have the most frequently ordered items close together to make it more efficient. And you don't want to have to compete between existing store customers with the people fulfilling the order. So if e-commerce gets to a significant scale, companies are going to face tremendous pressure to move away from this in-store fulfillment to different options. One option is to create what they call dark stores, which is just aisles that are optimized for fulfilling orders from online orders, and that'll work in places where people have excess real estate and there's sufficient markets. Increasingly, though, people are looking at automated systems for fulfilling orders. And these are like mini versions in some ways of an Amazon fulfillment center, these micro fulfillment centers that can take the most frequently ordered items, maybe 10,000 of the most frequently ones rather than all 35,000. And it creates this system where it's stacked efficiently, and robots following the algorithms will bring the item to individual packers who then can efficiently pack an order. And these are beginning to roll out. They can use existing parts of grocery stores. I mean, you have to take out, 8,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, something like that. They can vary in size. And Safeway, for instance, has 2 of these in the Bay Area now, one in South San Francisco, one in Santa Clara, and busy making a market doing that. But the other model is a much more highly sophisticated, nearly fully automated warehouse system, much larger, that can handle all the items. One of the things about those micro fulfillment centers is they typically operate only in one temperature regime. Room temperature, but of course many groceries require cooling and many require frozen areas. And so you're limited in a micro fulfillment center to just doing the automated part of the room temperature goods. But Ocado is a UK-based company that has developed a 2nd generation robot-based system, which you're seeing here. And they claim to be able to deliver groceries to people's homes in the UK for less than it costs to get into a grocery store and people buying it off the shelf because of their efficiencies in doing that. They have partnered with Kroger in the US to build 20 of these large fulfillment centers. They're much more expensive and take about 2 years to build out. But we're beginning to see those roll out as well. It'll be interesting to see how they work out and whether they're profitable or not. They're not fully automated because you still need to bring in the bulk goods that come in on pallets and break them up into the small different packages that then get moved around. And still this task of packing the final bags or tote boxes for individual customers it's a complex task because you've got different shapes, different weights, different colors. Our robots are not fully developed to do that quickly yet, although that's coming very soon. We're beginning to get probably in the next 2 to 3 years more of these automated picking systems to take that work on as well. So to give you a sense of what's happening in the pandemic, so as of January 2020, Takeoff Technologies is the most prominent one of these micro fulfillment centers. They had 5 going on at the moment. They now are saying that they're building about a new micro fulfillment center every other week. So maybe 26, 30 over the course of a year. So, there's about 40,000 grocery stores in the US. So it'll take a while to build out to that level. And I'll just go to this slide. This is sort of Kroger and where they're laying out their Ocado-based fulfillment centers. It's a mix of urban centers, Chicago, Indianapolis, Cincinnati is kind of near where their headquarters are, where they have existing business, but also moving into Florida and the Mid-Atlantic where they actually have no business at the moment at all. So they're using this online ordering and delivery system as a way of breaking into new markets. And of course, the big question going forward is which one of those options is likely to dominate the market. And, this was something put out by Takeoff. So of course they think their hyperlocal system is the best, but you think you have an existing market and you have to add the cost of picking and the cost of delivering that last mile. And that's what the manual fulfillment looks like. So much more expensive, and grocery stores are losing money every time you order groceries online. They're losing money, which they're willing to do for the moment to get the market share. But in the long run, they're going to have to shift that. The centralized automation has much less operating costs in the grocery store, less cost of picking because it's highly automated, but higher costs of delivery. Although they claim to have made that quite efficient in the UK, we'll see here. And this hyper-local automation of the micro-fulfillment centers has less distribution costs because it's much closer to the customer. But I think there'll be options for all three in the existing market. And so finally, moving to a point where I'll take your question soon, is how do you get food to the customer's home? And all sorts of new technologies are being developed in that area. Autonomous vehicles, we've all heard about the development in that area. It's taken longer than many people thought. But there are developed customized grocery delivery vehicles like that one on the left. UDelv has different compartments for different orders that you open by a particular code, or prepared food delivery, these little sidewalk-based robots that are moving around. There's interesting efforts afoot to try and begin delivering groceries via drones. Every major company in the industry is exploring drones as a way of getting food to people's homes. Walmart is now actually pilot a system of delivering that with Flytrex as their drone partner. Amazon has filed quite a number of different patents about ways of delivering drone-based deliveries, including groceries, including a blimp-based warehouse that would be supplied and delivered over time, and this beehive-based one, kind of, science fiction type technologies that are emerging in that area. We won't see this on a commercial basis anytime soon, but it'll be interesting to track over time. What we are likely to see more of is an effort to overcome one of the barriers of home-based delivery that existed prior to the pandemic and will re-emerge, which is, when people aren't home, how do you deliver groceries to them? And that was one of the biggest problems with Webvan in the 90s is, they wanted to deliver groceries at the time when people are just coming home from work, which is precisely when traffic is the worst. And so they're getting these new systems of smart locks where, you can allow someone to come in from a distance by seeing who they are as a trusted delivery person, and they can come in and put the groceries in your refrigerator themselves. But all of those are difficult to implement for a whole variety of different, both technological and business reasons. And so, what we're seeing at the moment is that the traditional driver-based delivery will continue to dominate for the near-term future. And order online and pick up in person actually accounts for about half of online orders at the moment, where you're ordering it online, but people will pick it up themselves rather than paying for that extra delivery or just taking the convenience of going to the store themselves. And of course, that home delivery part is now merging a bit with the prepared food delivery, which is part of what I mentioned at the beginning with companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats and Grubhub are increasingly coming into this space and delivering both groceries as well as prepared foods. And there's some people who are really counting on this home-based delivery of prepared foods as really taking off. There's an increasing phenomenon that's called ghost kitchens, which is restaurants that do not have a commercial customer front, and they are doing the cooking and doing delivery only. And they have actually taken off quite a lot. Cloud Kitchens is one major one that partially owned by the former CEO of Uber. That's now valued at $5 billion, according to the latest investment, as a real estate company investing in these warehouse-based kitchen delivery units that they think we're actually going to replace grocery stores in the long run. And why would you cook your own food if you can get a whole variety of different foods delivered to your house at a cheap price. We'll see how that is. So just finally to talk a little bit more about the jobs in the industry and sort of what does this mean for the future of work. And in current employment in groceries, almost 30% of positions in grocery stores are cashiers. You know, I'll talk a little bit more about the impacts of them. There's supervisors, and then there's food prep and serving occupations, and then the shipping, receiving, stocking clerks, and those order fulfillers, about 12%, some of the laborers, and then, you know, a mix of others. And I think what we're seeing in the combination of all of these different technologies and business processes connected to that is that, you know, the impacts on the existing grocery store jobs for the medium term future, call it 5 years, will be modest. Grocery stores are here to stay, and the impact on jobs in those stores will be modest. I think we'll see somewhat fewer cashiers, but as I said, we may be getting to only 8, 9, 10% of total grocery sales that'll be online that a cashier would have used otherwise. And I think we're seeing a long-term decline in cashiers as we're getting more of the self-checkout and more efficient you know, checking out systems. So I think that's more a threat to those jobs than the growth of e-commerce. We are definitely getting more fulfillment jobs, more picking orders and you know, fulfilling those orders, and more delivery drivers. And I think those are going to continue to go up as we get more of these micro fulfillment centers and warehouse-based fulfillment centers. That those order fulfilling jobs may plateau. But I think it's going to be a long, long time until we get any replacement for that last mile delivery. So those jobs, I think, are going to continue to be there and continue to grow. And we'll probably get more food prep positions. That one of the things that grocery stores are realizing is, you know, what is it that brings people into the store? And it's got to be some kind of value added, more experience, better prepared food, more variety of food, you know, giving people a real chance to, you know, touch, taste, and smell what's going on as they make their choices. And so that'll require people who are involved more in doing semi-prepared foods in those meal positions. And so, you know, in terms of total number of jobs, I think it's mostly going to add jobs, not replace jobs, and not have a dramatic effect. But, and here's the bottom line, we need to be really, really concerned about the quality of those jobs. And that's another whole presentation I've got on some research on the quality of jobs in these platform-based delivery jobs in particular. It's a predominantly or disproportionately immigrant workforce, disproportionately people of color. Wages are very low, and when you figure in expenses as part of that, it's even lower. They have no employment protections because they're classified as independent contractors, and so they don't get, you know, any retirement benefits or the protections of employment. They have little access to unemployment insurance because their employers are not paying into that system. In California, this is pretty clearly illegal under current law, Supreme Court decision in AB 5, and many people are probably aware that there's a proposition on the ballot in November that's being proposed by Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, major companies in this space to try and exempt them from the laws that have really made it clear that these people should be classified as an employee. So that's an important thing to watch in November. They also faced all the problems of the algorithms that drive their work in highly stressful situations and potentially undermining employment over time. And it's really insecure and unpredictable income. So, and especially with the home delivery, heavy reliance on tips. So I think this is really the biggest concern. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, besides the fact that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed, that we need to be really concerned about job quality in these trends. So I really look forward to your questions, and we'll get into discussion. And my email is there, cbenner@ucsc.edu, and happy to engage with anyone about that going forward.
Thank you so much, Chris. Very inspiring. So first up with questions, we have PK Agarwal of Slugs and Stein fame himself.
And a good friend of mine, so I'm so glad to have you here with us, PK.
So this question, is the future of food industry even more packaging intensive and bad ecology?
That's a really important question. And I think, if you'd asked me that a year ago, maybe you did ask me, there was a time when the meal kit industry was seen as a tremendous growth opportunity, where you get pre-measured individual ingredients shipped to your home with a recipe that you can then, cook up a really nice dinner together. And it's quite nice to have someone else do your shopping and planning ahead of time. But there's been tremendous resistance to that because of the massive amount of packaging that's part of that. It's it's the box, it's the insulation materials, and the individual wrapping on the tiny little bit of herbs that are part of that. And I think part of why that industry has not taken off so much, I think, is, at least in California, real environmental concerns about that. I didn't look specifically at, in terms of these e-commerce, of whether there's likely to be more packaging. One of the things that's a little different about groceries compared to Amazon-style e-commerce is that groceries can be done with reusable tote boxes. You don't have to have the cardboard boxes that are part of that, of shipping through the mail. So I don't think there's quite as much pressure through the home delivery of groceries for more packaging that you get with other sectors of e-commerce. So, I'm hopeful that it wouldn't have a big impact on the growth of packaging. But, anything that sort of takes away the direct connection between a customer and the item that they're buying and eating, I think can contribute to that concern about packaging. So trying to figure out how we get recyclable and decompostable packaging for food is going to be really, really important.
Wow, we have a lot of wonderful questions here. Next one is from Carlos. What about the small businesses? Would they be able to follow the giant stores?
Really, really good question. And I should mention that there will be a full report out from this research as soon as I finish writing it. My guess is by mid-October is when it'll be released. And I'm literally like half a day away from finishing up the final conclusions. And one of those key things that we'll talk about in the report is this distinction between the large businesses in the industry and the smaller businesses. One of the things we've seen over the last 20 years is increasing concentration. So if you look at the percentage of sales by the top 4 or the top 10 or the top 20, it's just gotten more and more in the industry. And part of that's a Walmart effect, that Walmart is, when they came into groceries, and now taken over 25% of the total grocery industry. But the technological capabilities required to take advantage of these new online resources and really sort of the customer data depends on certain sizes to that. So I think we are seeing we're definitely seeing a concentration. But the other thing is there's a tremendous long tail in the industry. I mean, literally hundreds and probably thousands of different brands of grocery stores around the country. Some, small regional chains, Piggly Wiggly is one, H-E-B, is another, that because of companies like Instacart that can build the infrastructure of the online ordering and provide the delivery, or by contracting with IBM or Microsoft or someone else for this retail as a service integrated platform, and then contracting with DoorDash or somebody else to do the delivery, I think they're able to take advantage of any growing market share in e-commerce. But one thing I really want to stress is that we're at a moment in e-commerce and the grocery industry where the big game is getting market share. Most people are losing money with e-commerce because it's just the additional costs that are involved in labor and fulfilling orders and the home delivery that, and the industry has a tiny profit margin anyway, about 1%, 1.5%. So you add any of those additional inefficiencies and costs, and they're probably losing money on that, which they're willing to do for a short period of time. If you're Instacart, you can have venture capital subsidies that are willing to take a loss for a period of time for building market share over time. Arguably mistreating their workers, paying low wages, cutting costs that way becomes a way of making that margin. But that's it's not going to work in the long term. In the long term, we're either going to have to pay more for the groceries we get at home, or they're going to have to figure out some other system of that. So yeah, the short answer to your question is, yeah, small business is disadvantaged in this world, but not without options.
Thank you. We have a new one here from Christina. I moved here from London 4 years ago and had a big culture shock with the lack of a reliable, green, and high-quality grocery delivery like Ocado in the UK. Do you know the reason why online grocery shopping doesn't seem to have been as popular here compared to other countries?
Yeah, again, another really good question. And when you compare the percentage of retail sales that are by e-commerce, the US is one of the lowest in the world. So as I said, 1, 2, 3% are the most recent figures. The UK, I think, is 10, 12, 15%, something like that. South Korea, again, I don't have the figures right in front of me, 35, 40%, something like that. China's getting that high as well. Why is that the case? People speculate about different things. One is we're a very auto-dependent society. And so we're used to driving, and we often just drive by the grocery store on our way home or between work and other errands. We have a much more geographically dispersed living style in the US, sprawl. Which makes it much less efficient to deliver. When you have denser cities and you can move around easier, it's easier to provide home delivery at a lower cost. I think people in many other countries are used to buying food for just a couple of days. If it's a local area stores are more decentralized, we tend to be more accustomed to these large mega stores, the Walmart type stores, but increasingly large grocery stores, and tend to do larger shops. And so I think people are more used to, like, if you're shopping for a lot of things, you want to be able to choose all of your individual products and things as well. So I know that doesn't fully answer the question, but I think there's some mix of that, sort of cultural preferences and the way our cities are built and the preferences that are tied up with that has made it very hard for grocery stores in the US to penetrate that market and expand e-commerce, where, as you say, in the UK, it's much more accepted.
A question from Christopher. He wants to know what what automation means for the farmer. What will it be like McDonald's, where they own the whole supply chain, including the farm?
Yeah, so I'm not studying specifically automation in farms, but I do know something about it from reading other people's work. And I guess one thing that I would really point out here is that on the farm, technology depends a lot on the individual commodity, the individual product. So, we have highly automated corn production, highly automated wheat production, highly automated soy production in the US. 150 years ago, we had 90%, 80% of the workforce was working in agriculture. We're now down to, less than 2% work in agriculture, and that's because of automation in sort of those major grain commodities that are the core of so many different products, for better or for worse. Where it's very hard to automate is in vegetables and fruits, and because they're very different type of automation needs for each type of commodity. And there are efforts to automate strawberry production, for instance, that can, identify by color which strawberries are ripe and, manage to pick it without bruising it. But it's very hard to do, which is why we have such a, large farm worker labor force in California, because most of what we produce is the vegetables and fruits for the world. I haven't seen a lot of integration certainly not from the grocery store end back to the farms. It's really not integrated in the supply chain that way. We are seeing in particular sectors some communication and sharing of data across those sectors. I happened to see a presentation by someone again in the strawberry industry, which is important to the Salinas Valley that was able to use carton-based sensors and looking at rates of ripening to be able to discover certain grocery stores that weren't cooling the strawberries to a sufficient level, that they were put out in sort of an open room temperature display case for too long, and so they were rotting too quickly. So you can share data across a whole supply chain, even if it's not fully integrated. But I think it's going to be quite a while till we see real automation on the farms of vegetables and fruits.
Next question is from Deb. We tried to tip our Vaughn's driver the other day, and he said he absolutely couldn't take it, as they just got a, quote, substantial raise, unquote. We kept trying to get him to take it, but he wouldn't. A couple days prior, the driver was grateful and accepted the tip. Can the company actually mandate that tips not be taken? Seems terrible.
That does seem a bit terrible. I don't know Vaughn's well. If I'm not mistaken, that's the same company, Albertsons, that owns Safeway. And it's one of the places I know that has a unionized delivery workforce in the Bay Area, at least about 150 workers that are delivering. So it is possible, I can imagine, as part of a negotiated agreement with the union, that they try and discourage tips because they're getting a decent wage through their union contract, and wanting to ensure customers don't see that as a barrier to ordering at home. But I'm not aware of them really being able to mandate against accepting tips. I'm a little surprised to hear that story, and it's, I don't know, maybe a particularly principled unionized delivery driver who's not wanting to undermine the contract, who's not accepting tips. You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Next question from Johnny. Do you think that the online, just disappeared. Do you think that the online grocery delivery is sustainable and profitable if the automated fulfillment stores and drone delivery you talked about became mainstream?
Yeah, I guess it depends a bit on how you define sustainable and profitable. Many people, I would probably agree with them, would argue that our current food system is not sustainable at the moment for a whole variety of different reasons. So I think it depends on our criteria. Is it profitable? I think so. I think part of it is customers getting used to paying for what it costs to get home delivery, and I think the cost will have to go up for it to be profitable for the companies. But I think particularly in the pandemic, some of us with disposable income are discovering the conveniences of having home delivery. And there's a health factor at the moment. One of the things that people are talking a lot about in the industry is, what will happen after the pandemic subsides someday? Will people go back to their old shopping patterns, or is this a permanent change in the industry? And I think one of the things that will revert back is fewer health concerns about actually going into the grocery store yourself. And so people who are shopping remotely because of health vulnerabilities or just because of concerns about their health, might not be as resistant to going into the store in the future. But I do think once people have experienced that convenience and done it multiple times, that they might be willing to continue to pay for that going forward. And I do think the costs are going to come down as we get some of the efficiencies in place. As I said, the current thing of fulfilling from existing grocery stores is probably the least efficient way we can do this order fulfillment. Companies like Peapod have been doing this for a long time, and I think are doing quite well at the moment as part of that, because they are able to pick from more efficient warehouses. And again, just to say a little bit more about that, they do have some automated warehouses now too, but for many years it's just a warehouse where you put items on the shelf in a way that frequently ordered items are all close to each other, and it's much quicker to fulfill an order that way rather than having to wander all up and down the aisles of a store. And so it can cut the labor costs as part of that as well. So, I mean, I don't think we're going to go back. I think, that level of 8, 9, 10% of the industry being e-commerce will, continue to inch up over time. We've seen, even prior to the pandemic, double-digit growths in e-commerce for the last really 15 years off of a tiny base. So it's growing, and I think that will continue. So yes, I think we'll continue to have this e-commerce, and then it'll be ultimately, companies will be able to survive and be profitable doing that.
So we have a combined question from Corinne and Stephanie, who want to make you into a wizard and give you a magic wand, policy wizard. So the question is, if you had this wand, how would you protect the worker from the potential lower quality jobs, from automation, et cetera? What would you change policy-wise?
Well, there's sort of different layers to answering that question, that some of which are very specific to this workforce and some are kind of more generally. So I'll think about sort of where to start. And maybe I'll start at the big picture, is that we have a system of workplace-based health insurance that is crazy. It's clearly crazy in a pandemic, as people get laid off and lose their health insurance just at the time when they need to have health protections. And regardless of whether you think a Medicare for all system is correct, or some mix of private insurance with a public option is correct, or some other system, we can get into that debate. But having your health insurance linked to your place of work is inefficient economically, because it really prevents this is getting into a lot of labor market economics, but it prevents the rapid adjustment of labor markets that are required to take advantage of new innovations and grow and change over time. So it's a real constraint on entrepreneurialism, on new job creation. There's very few economists these days who don't think that our current health system isn't a drag on our economic growth. So that would help these workers, because from some other data, we know that about a quarter of them, 20%, don't have any health insurance whatsoever, the ones doing the driving. And so they'd at least have some coverage for that. That would help many other workers besides this as well. So if I had a magic wand, that's the first thing I do. The second thing is this misclassification issue. And the key thing there is sort of two things, that when someone's misclassified as an independent contractor, and we can talk a little bit more about what misclassification means. One is they don't get the protections of access to unemployment insurance or workers' compensation, or health and safety protections in the workplace. So in this moment, not having rights or access to personal protective equipment, or cleaning equipment for the car or whatever else. And the companies, the platform companies that are employing them, hiring them through the platforms, are not having to pay into the health insurance, unemployment insurance system, the workers' comp system, not having to pay payroll taxes, so Social Security and et cetera. So it becomes a way of them, really being heavily subsidized by this misclassification system. And getting into the issue of what determines misclassification, there are real independent contractors out there who, have independent knowledge in business, have a whole variety of different customers, can really choose what kind of work they want to do, have independent relationships with their clients. That's not the circumstances for people delivering on DoorDash or, Instacart, where it's the platform and the algorithms that are part of that fully control what kind of business is sent their way, and what kinds of incentives they get for doing certain business, or what kind of penalties they get for refusing certain jobs. It's really heavily controlled in that sense, and they don't have any independent other types of customers. So I really do think it's a case of misclassification. And so enforcing existing California law, which the Xavier Becerra, the Attorney General of the state, is bringing lawsuits against Uber and Lyft to try and force them to abide by California law. I think is really important in doing that. And then, I think the final thing is workers need voice. they need to have voice and real power in their working conditions. And that can take many different forms. It can take the form of our traditional union. It can take the form of worker advocacy organizations or legal advocates for workers. And I think we really need to support those kind of voices for these independent contractor gig workers. And part of that is ultimately about restructuring our labor law. We have a very decentralized labor law system where it's representation by, workplace, not just company. Whereas most advanced countries of the world have some kind of system of sectoral representation, and so bargaining with an industry association. So it doesn't matter who actually employs you in the industry, but there are certain standards of minimum wages and increased in pay over time. And if we had a system that could ensure worker voice across the whole of the grocery industry, if not the whole retail sector, I think that would go a long ways to protecting workers' rights. So those are 3 things we could do if I had a magic wand.
A question from Emily. Are there data on the types of people who shop for groceries online? Are they foodies, novice cooks? And maybe I'll add, workaholics, maybe versus homeowners or people who don't have cars.
Yeah, so there are surveys out there. I don't know anyone's asked that foodie question, so I don't know, but they tend to be younger, millennials rather than baby boomers. Familiarity with online and comfort online is part of that. They tend to be more middle and upper income rather than lower income. That's probably not a surprise. They tend to be more urban rather than rural. So that's part of it as well. What else can I say about that? I think that's about all I got on who's actually doing it. One of the questions is in terms of the profitability of this industry. I was coming back to another question is, what is the, if you're running a micro fulfillment center, you got to have enough volume to make it worth paying off the capital expenditures. And so, what is the market density you have to have in any particular city or region? And that's part of why it's concentrated in urban areas at the moment. It's kind of hard to get that market share when you have to do a long distance driving through rural areas or even, distributed or sprawling suburban areas. It's a little harder. Of course, one of the challenges in urban areas is parking and then congestion. So there's a bit of a trade-off of, probably not the densest places. But New York City at the moment has probably the highest rate of online ordering e-commerce. So it gives you a sense of it's predominantly those urban areas.
Great. We have one from Jasmine, and she wants to know about you personally. Have you ever ordered online groceries? And what company is your favorite?
That's what I'll pull up to advertise, and I really appreciate that question. And I was thinking about asking that in the original poll of the different ways that people shop online. I have ordered custom food products online pretty regularly. There's a particular type of mayonnaise that the local store doesn't have, of lemonade that, I order online. And I don't know, Cliff Bars, you can get discount large Cliff Bars when you order them directly online. I did start to try and do a regular sort of full grocery order online. And oh my gosh, it was just the barriers to doing that effectively. I was trying to search for the particular brand of bread that I like that doesn't have the added sugar, and I couldn't find it on the website, so it took forever. And then trying to get the organic milk with the 2% from the particular brand that I know exactly where it is in the store, but I just could not find it on. So, after a while I gave up, and it gave me an appreciation for that challenge of that user experience. And I realized, once I had gotten everything to the shopping cart, each subsequent time would be easier because it's already in there. You can just replicate sort of the common things that you buy. But, for me, I don't mind going to the grocery store, and, I do it. I'm not supporting a large family. Oh, that's the other thing about online is that people who have larger families actually tend to do it more as well, because then it's a more inconvenience for doing that. So I'm afraid I don't have a recommendation for you about which company to hire through. One thing I would say is if you're concerned about the working conditions, Safeway, Vons are unionized, and they do have union delivery workers, so would encourage that. Whole Foods is not. Kroger's is unionized, but we don't really have many Kroger's around here. So Walmart is not unionized. So to the extent that's a factor for you, keep that in mind.
Question from Anne. One second, it just scrolled off my screen. I have been enjoying Farmers Market on Wheels, buying almost directly from nearby farmers. Problem is getting too many things I can't use that spoil too fast. You didn't mention this business model. Do you think this one will work?
Yeah, really interesting. So I am quite familiar with CSAs, community supported agriculture. The way you've described farmers markets on wheels sounds kind of similar. I don't know that particular model, but with a CSA, you're committing to buying, a certain volume of food every week or every other week from particular farmers, and the product mix changes with the season. So you know that you're not shipping something from long way away. It's local and seasonally appropriate. And, I think there's no question that business model has been around for 30, 40 years, sustainable, slowly growing. And I think more people are interested in that as we've gotten more interest in supporting local economies and connecting with farmers and really having more values in our food system. People talk about value-based food chains. So I think that's really valuable, particularly for the fresh vegetables. And often they'll come with a recipe for whatever the particular products. I know when I don't currently have a CSA subscription, but used to, I'd always appreciate in the middle of winter when you get all the different types of dark leafy greens that, how do I make a creative kale recipe? That's always nice to have those recipes there. So I think that's great. You do mention that there is a problem of spoiling too fast, and that takes balance in terms of what the right quantity is. I have shared subscription food boxes with other households to make sure that they don't spoil, and sometimes then you have to supplement by going to the store. But I think it's definitely a worthy model, and I guess it falls in the space of, it's not food delivered to the home. Maybe Farmers Markets on Wheels actually delivers to the home. The CSA is often picked up at one central delivery point, not a grocery store. So it's another of those in-between models where you're pre-ordering and then picking it up, not having to shop yourself. Someone else is fulfilling that order.
So Piper wants to take this in a little more philosophical direction, and I'm going to shorten it a bit, Piper. I hope it works out. So are we considering how these systems will only intensify the disconnect between ourselves and our food's provenance, but dehumanizing even more than we already are the relationship between humans and their food? A second part of that, are technologists trying to solve a problem that we don't have just because they can't?
That's a really interesting and important set of debates that, of course, many of us are thinking about quite frequently, and how to sort of jump into that. So one is, are technologists solving a problem that we don't really have? Yes. There is a long tradition in the technology industry of, trying to design for, needs that people don't have. I think there's legitimate opinions on both sides of that, often, customers don't know what they want until somebody creates it. Like, the iPhone, like, I didn't know I wanted an iPhone before it came out, but I kind of like it. So, that was a case of maybe solving for a problem that wasn't identified by customers, but, had some innovations to it that has, some negative impacts as well as some of the positive impacts. some of the negative impacts that you're alluding to. But I think it comes back to the question of what is driving development in new technologies. And there's really no question, I would say, that the dominant force in driving technological development is not meeting human needs. It's in search of profits, capitalist system. And that's kind of the economic system we operate in. And I do think we need to have a lot more systems in place to try and encourage technology development in the public interest. And a little bit of a soapbox and sort of marketing. I direct something on campus called the Institute for Social Transformation. We're working very closely with something else called the Center for IT Research in the Interests of Society, which is a 4 campus-wide collaboration between Santa Cruz, Berkeley, Merced, and Davis. And within that, and with what's now a national network of something called the Public Interest Technology University Network, we're really trying to help build up this field of public interest technology, of how do we put in place policies, incentives, social pressures to develop technologies more around human needs rather than profit. And I think there's many areas of public health, for instance, at the moment that needs a lot more attention that we've ignored for 30 years because there's not as much money in that end of the health industry. So we are trying to help push more incentives in the technology interest, in the public interest, but it's really swimming upstream at the moment. And then in terms of the way that technology gets in the way of an authentic relationship with our food system, or a deeper relationship with our food, or deeper understanding of health in our food system, I think, what to say about that? I mean, I tend to be a technological optimist, and I study technological change, and there's lots of technologies I like, and so I'm not one of these people that instinctively is resistant to technology. It's really the opposite. I really want to harness technology for good, and I think there's some conveniences around e-commerce that are really nice and helpful. I do think we need a much deeper relationship with where our food comes from. And I think there are ways that technologies could facilitate that, to help understand, who are the farm workers who are picking our strawberries in the midst of this crazy smoke that we're all trying to stay out of, and they're out working in every day. How do we make more transparent the supply chains of where our meat comes from, or what are the processing that goes into all of our processed goods, that there are ways that, through tracing and through, social, certification, organics, fair trade, that kind of thing, that we can get a better understanding of that food system. So, I agree with the premise, I think, of your question, that it's really important for us to have a deeper understanding of food and its relationship to our health and our body and our society and global climate change. I'm not sure that technology is the major barrier to deepening that understanding and relationship, but I understand that it's a very real debate.
Mike, I think you're on.
Oh, sorry. We have a question from Scott. Let me pull that up. Would you speculate that with more people buying packaged goods online and at megastores like Costco, that this possibly gives farmers markets and small farms offering weekly CSAs more of an opportunity?
I think it potentially does. As I kind of tried to mention in the talk, the online ordering is easiest in standardized, regular products where people don't need to see and touch and smell their produce. And if more people are getting that delivered at home or online, then I think it creates more of a space and time to connect with local farmers and do CSAs and get their produce that way. Because if they're not going into the grocery store as much, maybe they can go to local farmers market more frequently and get that. So I'm hopeful that that's the case. I think it will depend a lot on the farmers markets and CSAs really trying to, yeah, expand that opportunity and space, and make that experience of going to the farmers market in particular enjoyable, and sort of a social event, because that's I mean, shopping actually is a really social event. People have studied this a lot, that people go to the shopping malls and stores because of interacting with people and the entertainment that's part of that, believe it or not. And so, yeah, I think farmers markets can do more of that as well. I lived for 8, 9 years in Davis, by the way, and people who know Davis know that they have a very vibrant farmers markets on both Wednesday nights in the summer and Saturdays year round, that has music and performances and lots of street food, prepared food. I saw it as another question. And, those kind of farmers markets are really vibrant, and we have some aspects of that here in Santa Cruz too.
Okay, this is actually the last question. Thank you so much for being with us. For Megan, will online shopping change marketing and packing strategies of the suppliers and companies making and distributing products with less traffic walking down the aisles? Will this reduce sales prices? Or just increase profit margins? Or will the cost of operating fulfillment centers make this a wash?
I'm really loving all your questions. And this is such an important one, because I didn't really talk about, because one of the things that is part of this whole industry is, they call them CPGs, consumer packaged good providers or industries. It's all the center part of the store, are increasingly trying to get directly to customers in their homes without having to go through a retail establishment. Because if they're selling directly to customers, they're essentially getting that retail markup rather than the grocery store. So sometimes that's going through Amazon, sometimes it's buying directly on their websites. And one of the things that happened quite recently is DoorDash just announced a new service that they're calling Dash Mart, if I'm not mistaken, which is essentially trying to get into the convenience store end of the market. And they've also announced a major, maybe that's Instacart, a major partnership with 7-Eleven. But what DoorDash is doing with Dash Mart is, again, trying to cut out the retail end of the industry by being this direct connection to the customer. Of course, that's what Amazon has done for a long time, is they don't have as much retail real estate as most retailers, because it's all coming from their warehouse fulfillment center. So they cut out all the costs in that end of the industry. And I think one of the things that's happening with the growth of e-commerce is these shifting power relationships in the supply chain, where the original, goods providers are seeing, oh, hey, there's an opportunity where we can get more direct relationship with customers and get a little more profit out of that. And the retailers are then trying to figure out, well, what's going to bring people to, the store and keep our customer base there. And this is a little bit of a side, but since we all have some connection to universities, I think universities are going through the exact same set of debates right now with the growth of online education. And, you can get great education remotely from a lot cheaper places than the University of California. The question is, what is the quality you're getting there? And what is the quality of the experience that we provide at the University of California that's going to make an investment in what's usually an in-person experience worthwhile? So, I think, again, the key answer to your question is yes, it's shifting those relationships. And I think it's going to be a question going in the future of, who's going to end up benefiting from that. And again, I don't think there's, one that's going to benefit and what lose. It's a, complex, constantly shifting thing. But, these companies are always thinking about how do we get, the most out of the consumer's dollar and meeting their needs. So direct to consumer is a key part of this trend that I didn't talk a lot about.
Well, thank you so much. We haven't gotten to all the questions, but you'll get a chance, as we'll mention later, to follow up. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Chris, for joining us this evening. This talk has been recorded, and it will be available on the UC Santa Cruz Arts and Lectures YouTube channel. As soon as we wrap up here, as I mentioned, we will invite you to join us in a Zoom meeting room to chat, discussion, and networking. Professor Benner will join us, and you'll get a chance to meet other participants. Now, we're going to put up a poll now to find out whether you want to join us. The point of the poll is just to figure out how many rooms we need to have. We don't want to have too many people in one room, and the professor will hop between them. So, optional, but please give us an indication, yes or no. Okay, another big round of thanks, and I want to also thank the staff of the Alumni and Special Events offices who are helping us. That would be Kara, Diana, Paulina, and Kristen. Our next event, Slugs and Steins, will be October 12th and will feature Dr. Doug Lin, professor in astronomy and astrophysics. Professor Lin has been honored as a Guggenheim Fellow, von Humboldt Fellow, and Sackler Fellow. He's a recipient of the Otto Schmidt Medal and a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He has been director of the Kavli Institute for Astronomy and Physics. Stay tuned for the title of his talk. We've got 3 other events coming up in the very near future that we want to announce tomorrow too. So 12 to 1, the Alumni Career Network will present a workshop on effective salary negotiation. UCLA alumna and founder and managing partner of the Reddock Law Group, Angela Reddock Wright, will offer actionable tips and insights on negotiating job offers, salary, and other tangible benefits to boost your confidence and arm you with the right resources and tools. Our very own Cara Snyder will help organize these workshops. Then tomorrow, again, September 15th, 5:30 to 7:30, we'll have Hope, Fear, and Desire for Democracy on the Eve of an Election. This is the first of 4 talks in the University Forum series on elections. What are they good for? It will feature Dean Mathiowicz, Deborah Gold, and Christina Beltran, and will be moderated by the one and only Dr. Chris Benner. On September 22nd, a big event, the Deep Read with Margaret Atwood live in conversation with alumna Kate Schatz. Margaret Atwood will be in conversation with Kate, who's from Stevenson 01 in creative writing, also with the New York Times bestselling author of Rad American Woman, A to Z, William Bro Adams, a PhD in History of Consciousness from UCSC 1982, and chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities from 2014 to 2017, will be the event MC. So all these and more are found on the calendar listed calendar.ucsc.edu. Okay, so we will have 1 room, it looks like. Please join us. And we'll be switching over. I think an announcement of the link is already provided on the chat room. So go ahead and click on that. Again, thank you.
Thank you all, and look forward to talking with those who are going to join the breakout room, and the rest of you really appreciate your interest.